In this video, I'm going to talk about for loops in JavaScript. Now, for loops are structures that repeat, and they're very similar to the for loops that you wrote in Snap. For loops have three parts. The first part of my for loop says what to start a variable at. So here I've created a variable called x, and I'm going to start it at 1. Okay, separated by a semicolon is the second part. Now, the second part of the for loop says keep repeating as long as this condition is true. So I'm going to start x at 1. I'm going to keep repeating whatever is inside my for loop as long as x is less than 5. And then finally, the third part, also separated by a semicolon, tells me what I should change my variable by. So here my variable again is called x. This says add 1 to x and save that back into x. All right, x equals x plus 1 says add 1 to x and store that back in x. So x is going to increase by 1, okay, after every time through the for loop. And then inside my for loop, in between this open and close curly bracket, that's the inside of my for loop, it's going to give me an alert pop-up and it'll tell me count equals and then the value of x. So if I run this, should be no big surprise, it tells me count equals 1, right? Because it starts at 1. Okay, so it ran count equals 1. If I hit OK, count equals 2, 3, 4. That's it. Notice it did not say count equal 5. It keeps repeating as long as it's less than 5. Now I'm going to make a couple of changes here. Usually programmers don't write x equals x plus 1. The shortcut way of doing that is x plus plus. And you're going to see this a lot. X plus plus means x equals x plus 1. Now if I run it again, you'll see, yeah, it does the exact same thing. Hey, what if I wanted to count by 2? Well, I could certainly do that. I could say x equals x plus 2, and now it's going to count by 2. I'll run it again. 1, 3. That's it. 1, 3. Didn't say 5. Again, it keeps going while it's less than 5. Now, of course, there are shortcut ways of counting by other values as well. Actually, let me just say I could count by 3s. I could count by 5s. I could count by anything. It really doesn't matter. Now, there's a shortcut way of doing that as well. You can say x plus equals, you're going to see this a lot too, x plus equals some value. So if I do this, it means x equals x plus 2. That's the shortcut way of writing it. I could say x equals x plus 3. I could say x equals x plus 1. Of course, this is going to count by 1s. Now, you already know if you're going to count by 1s. Typically, it's written that way. All right, we're going to look at a few more examples of for loops, so hang in there. I have changed my for loop a little bit, and let's see if we can figure out what's going to happen here. So I've created a variable called nums, and I've given it the initial value of the numbers are, and here is my for loop. I mean, this should be familiar a little bit. I created a variable called I. I'm going to keep repeating as long as I is less than 5, and you know I++ is just the shortcut way of writing I equals I plus 1. So it's going to add 1 to I after every time it goes through the loop. Now you already know this is going to count from 0 to 4, but this time I'm taking the value of I each time and concatenating it with nums. So nums equals nums plus I. Well, nums starts out as the values are. The first time through the for loop, it's going to stick 0 onto nums. And so nums is going to equal, the numbers are 0. Then it's going to repeat again through my for loop. It's going to stick the next value. It's going to plus or concatenate the next value of I onto nums and save that as the new value of nums, and so forth. So when I'm all done, nums should equal 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then here I am at the end. I'm just writing this out. And you know how this works. Document.getElement by ID out. It's going to write it out right in this paragraph between these two paragraph tags right here. And if I run it, in fact, it says the numbers are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I'm going to say this one more time. This is a tricky line of code for students. What this does is it takes the value of nums, concatenates I to it, and saves that back into nums. In programming, the right-hand part happens first. It does this, takes the value, sticks it into the left-hand part, in this case nums, and then repeats again. So it keeps sticking the new value of I to nums, and then at the end I print it out. All right, let's look at a few more examples. I have a little bit more going on in this example, so let's talk about what's happening. So I've created another output ID here. I have out and out2. All right, so let's see what happens. And again, I have a variable called nums. This time I'm just starting it as quote, quote. That's really nothing, but it's a string, right? It's nothing. And then I have another variable called sum, and I'm starting that as a number. Interesting. I'm starting it at 0. And here's my for loop. Actually, I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to, just so you can see a little difference, I'm going to go from 0 up to and including 5. So this is actually going to count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It says keep going as long as I is less than or equal to 5. I'm going to increment I. I'm going to add 1 to I after every time. This time I'm going to stick together. I'm going to concatenate nums with the value of I with a blank space. Okay? And the next line, I'm adding sum, which starts out as 0, plus I, which is also 0 the first time through, and I'm sticking that back into sum. What do you think sum is going to equal to when do you think sum is going to be equal to when I'm done? You got it figured out? And then at the end, I'm going to print out these two values here. Out, and it says the sum is sum. Well, I think you know what it's going to say. So here are my numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each one with a space after them. And actually, there's a space after that 5 too. And then it added up the sum. Yes, the sum of all these numbers is 15. Let's see, that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Right, so just by starting sum as a number, when I use the plus operator, it actually knows to do the addition. Whereas if I start it as quote, quote, it thinks it's a string. Well, it is a string, and it concatenates them. And just to show you that that's actually happening, if I start sum, if I start sum as quote, quote, and rerun it, yeah, see, it says the sum is, and it just sticks all the numbers together. Well, if you want to treat it like a number, you got to initialize it like a number. Interesting. All right, hang in there. We're going to do just a couple more examples. In this example, I've added an if-else statement within my for loop. Notice how I've indented it. It's within my for loop. So here I've declared my variable called answer, and I've set it equal to quote, quote, so it'll treat it like a string rather than a number. And here I'm starting my variable x at 5, and I'm going to keep going as long as x is greater than or equal to 1. And then I'm going to subtract 1 from x each time through, x minus minus. This is going to count down. X minus minus, this is the shortcut way of writing x equals x minus 1. Okay, so it's going to count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if x, this is of course remainder, if the remainder of x divided by 2 equals 0, in other words, if the number is even, it's going to stick an e onto my answer. If it's odd, it's going to stick an O onto my answer. So it's going to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but I'm not going to say those numbers. I'm going to stick E onto the answer if it's even, O if it's odd. And if I run this, no big surprise, O, E, O, E, O, right? Because 5 is odd, then 4 is even, then 3, then 2, then 1. Interesting. So minus minus counts down. Now let me just show you a shortcut way of writing answer equals answer plus something. And hopefully this won't be too confusing. The shortcut way, and this is called a compound operator here, is just writing, you'll get used to it, that this says answer, well, plus equals E. So this means answer equals whatever it was plus some new value. Answer equals answer plus E. Now, maybe instead of writing E, this time I'll write, well, let's keep it at E. I'll run it again. You'll see it's the exact same thing. But you know what? This time I'm going to set answer to 0, so it'll treat it like a number. And this time it'll say if answer is divisible by 2, instead of writing E, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 1. Ooh, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to say answer minus minus. So this is the shortcut way of subtracting 1 from answer. But if it's odd, I'm going to say answer plus plus. I'm going to run it now. And it says 1. Well, why did it say 1? Well, every time I had an even number, it subtracted from answer. Every time I had an odd number, it added 1 to answer. Well, as you know, there were 3 odd numbers and 2 even numbers. So, right, that's why I have 1 as my output. Give that one some thought. All right, hopefully that's enough to get you started on your first for loop activity. Thanks so much for watching.